Here we go. A neighborhood volunteer, get this, guns down an unarmed teenage boy and then claims self-defense. But was racism really the cause? Who is this guy and why was he so sure Trayvon Martin was a threat? What if this were your child? This young boy, great kid, buys a candy, talking to his sister, never returned home. He's shot and killed by a neighborhood watch captain who claims he was acting in self-defense. There's a picture of him right there. And then doesn't get arrested. This is the thing that what goes on in Florida? Of course, naturally, the story is in Florida. The death of Trayvon Martin at the hands of George Zimmerman, who is the other gentleman there, has sparked outrage and has prompted more questions than I have answers for. Was Trayvon targeted because he was African American? Who exactly is George Zimmerman? And what kind of person transformed a can of iced tea and Skittles into a dangerous threat? Police says there's no evidence of a crime. Really? But there is a grand jury who will investigate the killing. Tonight, we're trying to understand why this happened. Joining me to help tease this apart is Dr. Paul Reagan, Associate Professor of Psychiatry at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. I've got Steve Kardian, former police detective, and in the studio with me, attorney Tanya Acker. I have Steve Kardian, who is somebody that can help us sort this out. You know, what went wrong here? Is this a cop wannabe who is paranoid and takes the law in his own hands?
Dr. Drew, in my 30 years in law enforcement, I wish I had $1 for every one of these type personalities I ran into. These are individuals that secrete themselves into positions with a little bit of authority, and they try and act like police officers. So, yeah, he absolutely is a cop wannabe. He had a 4-year degree in criminal justice, and he was acting out his desired dream of being a police officer. He overstepped his lines, and now we have a young man dead.
Steve, how do we, I mean, to me, we have to, this is crazy, but we have to protect ourselves from these guys, not just the criminals, right?
You know, they do. And this was a homicide. It's a homicide. The stand your ground law is an affirmative defense or a defense to the homicide, according to the law. And it just wasn't investigated like a homicide, unfortunately. And we have to protect ourselves from people like this that take the law into their own hands, that wear the police officer's cap, and people get hurt and die.
Steve, I have a question for you. Is it the gun and the Lone Ranger that really caused this thing to spiral out of control?
We know that when he exited the vehicle, he had gun in hand. So God only knows his mindset at that moment. I mean, did he feel threatened before he even spoke to the kid? So, yeah, again, we have somebody acting out in the capacity of what they believe is a police officer, and we now have a fatality as a result of that.
And, Steve, you heard the question I asked Mr. Sliwa. I'm going to ask you the same thing. I mean, shouldn't vigilante groups that do tremendously positive work be wary of guys like this?
Absolutely. What I like about Curtis's organization, he's got structure, leadership, and organization, and they act a little differently. Like he said, he goes out into groups. They don't carry weapons. They can and do intervene when they have to, physically, but there are laws that, the use of force laws, the justification laws, allow for that.
I'm so very hurt by this whole situation. It's a nightmare, and I don't understand why this man has not been arrested, at least charged, and let a judge and jury decide if he's guilty. Thank you.
I also want to thank Steve Kardian and Curtis Sliwa. I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to them. Ran out of time.